Hello, Spearlifters. Good day, and I hope you're doing well. There's a lot of misinformation about the vaccine related to COVID-19. People are feeling really anxious in these times, and some honestly want to feel secure knowing that a safe vaccine will be out as soon as possible. So in this episode, I wanted to speak to an expert about this for you, but not to talk specifically about when a COVID-19 vaccine will be ready, but rather explain the actual process of vaccine developments and timelines. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you're all doing well and have a great day. Take care. Dr. Amador, welcome to Spearlift. How are you today?
Thank you. Fine. How about you?
Very well, thank you. Just living another day in this life of pandemic and 2020 lockdown. And
yeah.
I hope you're doing well.
Thank you.
Doctor, a lot of people right now, we're halfway through 2020, and a lot of people are worried about when, or not worried, but people are very curious when a vaccine will be ready, because
That's right.
Social distancing seems to be challenging in many countries. There's more cases after lockdowns are lifted, and there's a lot of people, there's a certain group of people who are just wanting to get the vaccine right now and just very anxious to get the vaccine right now to counteract the situation with COVID-19, right? So, I mean, people want to get back to their lives pre-COVID, basically.
Yeah.
I know that is a huge challenge, and we just have to see when that's going to happen. So, Spearlifters, I've invited Dr. Amador to be on Spearlift in this episode because she is an expert that can give us insight into how vaccines are developed and how long those processes usually take to do. So, Doctor, can you please give our Spearlift viewers a bit more, more background about yourself, your profession, and your expertise?
Of course. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for being here, for the invitation. And I'm a medical doctor. Then I did a master degree on research, and my whole career has been on the pharmaceutical sector. So I've been in contact with developing certain medications, among those certain vaccines and antidotes for some venoms. So I think I can share my experience with you, so you know how all this process goes and how long it takes and how it's done. So you get to know and.
Yes, please. And if you could explain kind of the minutia, the details of what your work involves, when especially the trial runs and the phases and things like that, that would be excellent. Okay. That whole process before coming to market.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've been involved specifically in all the preparations for clinical trials, the picking of the patients, the selection of how what are the characteristics a patient or a participant of any trial has to have to get the results we're looking for. This is to say that when we run a clinical trial, any phase, I'll talk about the phases of clinical trials later on, but in each phase you need certain types of individuals to be enrolled. So I've been part of designing these kind of studies and processing all the results we got from these trials to publish them and tell everyone what we've found, even if it's not what we'd like to find, even if the medication didn't work or the antivenom didn't work. We have to share. We have the social responsibility to share all those details, because that's science. And well, that's briefly what I do. So I'm really involved in I have been really involved in all the design of clinical trials, and I've been really near to all the process since the beginning to after the medication or the products. In this case, well, we're talking about vaccines or maybe antivenoms. When they are marketed, what happens then? What happens then, and what happens before? What needs to happen to have a product marketed?
Okay, excellent. And so can you please explain how many phases, how many trials are there in general to develop a vaccine, or does that vary as well on even the type of vaccine? Mm-hmm. Please explain in more depth especially the timeline. So for example, I don't know any of this. So let's say hypothetically there's like 4 phases. Okay, phase 1, choose phases. Phase 2, I don't know what. Phase 3, etc. Mm-hmm. So what's like the phases for that, the appropriate timelines for each of that, and how long does each of that take?
Okay, first of all, I would like to clarify that vaccines development has a more they are more thoroughly tested than any other product, than any other medication, okay? But they follow the same steps as any other medication. I would like to divide the process of making, of delivering to the market product in 5 stages, okay? First stage will be the exploratory stage. The second one will be the preclinical stage. Third one will be clinical stage. Fourth one will be approval stage, and the last one, the fifth one, will be oversight stage. During the first stage, which is the exploratory stage, here only laboratory research is involved, and it usually takes like 2 to 4 years. Okay, this is the exploratory stage. Only laboratory research is done here. Then the preclinical stage. Here's where preclinical studies are carried out, and they use only like tissue or cells, or maybe animals are used for these trials, for these studies. Here we have the opportunity to see how the product, the candidate, in this case I'll call them the vaccine candidates. Okay, I will talk through all this only about vaccines, but keep in mind that this process is the same for every medication. Okay, but in this case I will call them vaccine candidates, because they're only vaccine candidates, they're not yet a vaccine. So in this preclinical stage, we have the opportunity to see how these vaccines behave on the cells, and we have the opportunity to modify how they behave and how they develop an immune response in those cells, and we have the chance to make them more effective. So this is a really important stage, and it usually takes like for about 1 to 2 years, depending on the medication or the vaccine we're talking about. Okay. Well, I would like to confirm, well, just to clarify, vaccines are substances that are used or are prepared to protect the body against diseases, and are made up of dead or weakened versions of a virus, bacteria, or toxin. Okay, and this is to induce the work the immune system does before it prepares your body. It's made to prepare your body to fight against this virus, bacteria, or toxin, or other microbe, and in a minor way to the real one. So when you become in face to face with the real thing, your body already knows how to do the work and how to face this real the living microbe. Okay, so being said that, well, the after the preclinical stage comes the clinical stage, where humans are already involved. Okay, the difference between preclinical and clinical stages are that in preclinical stages we don't use humans, we only use tissue or animals, mostly mice or monkeys, and on clinical stages humans are already involved. In clinical stage, well, there are three clinical trials types. Phase 1, these kind of trials are little trials. They involve a group of adults. They are always adults, not more than 20 to 80 participants. And when the vaccine, in this case, is intended for children, which for COVID won't be the case or could be the case, so it will take another kind of study. We use in the baseline we use adults. Then we start to test, well, gradually step down the research until we reach the target, the target, which will be the children. Okay, phase 1 trials help us to assess the safety of the candidate vaccine in humans. This is the first time the vaccine is proved in humans. Okay, so it's really important. It's a really important trial, and we usually don't use a placebo on this kind of trials. I will explain what, well, most of you might know, some of others don't. Well, a placebo is something that you divide your studies in your population in two groups. One will take the medication or the vaccine, or the vaccine will be proven on them, and in the other they might or might not know, they will be receiving the not something else that is not the vaccine that is being studied. Okay, in this case, in phase 1 studies, we don't use placebo. All of the participants know that a vaccine is being applied to them and what's for. Okay, phase 2 studies, they are larger groups they can go from several hundred of individuals that will participate in these kind of trials, and some of these individuals might be healthy or might belong to a group at risk of acquiring the disease we're studying. Okay, usually these trials are randomized. This is you don't know if you're a participant, you don't know to which group you will be belonging. Okay, to the one with the placebo or the one trying the vaccine, the candidate vaccine. Okay, in these kind of trials, what is assessed are the safety, the immune response of the candidate vaccine, what will be the proposed doses for this vaccine. Let's say, for example, you know that sometimes for children you need to apply them at 6 months, at the year, and then after 6 years you need to have another dose. So in these kind of studies, this is what is assessed: the proposed doses, the scheduled immunizations, if they should be scheduled, and what will be the method of delivery. Here you have to say, my vaccine will be orally used, or intramuscular, or it should be subcutaneous. Here is where you decide how you will apply your vaccine. Okay, and the last type of trials in this stage is phase 3 trials, which are much larger trials. These involve thousands to 10,000s of people. They also are randomized, and here they are double blind. This means that neither of the two groups know what they are getting, if they're getting the vaccine or they are getting the placebo. Sometimes you can tell a group you're getting the vaccine or you are getting the placebo. In these cases, none of them know what are they getting. Okay, and the goal of these trials is to assess the safety in larger groups. Let's say all of you have have read about when you get a medication, I'll speak now about medications, and you can see, okay, the most common adverse events you will have while taking, or they are probable to have, you probably might experience headache when taking this medication. Well, these kind of data, they come from this kind of studies, okay? When you get a larger population, in the first phases, you get little groups. Here you get larger groups. Sometimes these kind of studies are not carried out in just one country. They involve many countries, many sites. You need a lot of different type of patients. Here we try to get patients as the individuals who are being studied. So this is the goal, and also to assess the efficacy. Okay. After that comes when you've gotten a good phase 3, a successful phase 3 trial, then it comes, the next stage will be the approval stage. Here, the vaccine developer will submit a biologics license application to the FDA, which, well, I'm talking about the FDA for America, but there are many regulatory agencies around the world, but FDA kind of, it's like the gold standard for regulatory agencies. So I'm gonna say what happens with the FDA, and well, FDA, what we'll do is ensure that all these trials comply with what is required to, they are really committed to safety of patients, and before getting into the market, any medication, any product, any vaccine, they want to be sure that it will do more well than harm. So what they ensure is that all these phases, all these trials comply with all these requirements. They will go and study the factory where all these vaccines are made. They will check every point of all these trials, and then they will say, okay, well, we approve your vaccine. You can market it. Okay. After that comes the oversight stage, which for most medications it's like an optional part, but for vaccines is really important. The oversight stage includes studies called phase 4 trials, which these are not trials, not controlled trials. These are like oversight of what happens when the vaccine is in the market, when the vaccine is already being applied to any person, to anyone who, let's use this example of COVID. Let's say that the vaccine is already out in the market, and you go to the hospital and say, I want to get vaccinated. So you get vaccinated, but you're not a controlled patient. You're not a controlled individual. For clinical trials, we have every individual has to have some certain characteristics. You're out of these characteristics. For anything might get you out of these characteristics. So what is done in phase 4 trials is see how the common individuals react to this new vaccine or the new medication. Okay, this helps manufacturers and researchers to test the vaccine safety in these common individuals, its efficacy, and maybe other potential uses. Maybe you've heard, well, let's use an example. I took an aspirin, maybe it was for a headache, but I noticed that, well, when I take the aspirin, my hair grows longer or it's shinier. So I go and tell the manufacturer, oh, you know what? I noticed this, and this is a potential use that was not studied in the clinical trials, but now we know that this might happen. I'm not saying this happens with aspirin, it's just an example, but I'm trying to explain that part. Okay, so I don't know if it was clear, or you want me to explain anything.
Yeah,
further?
extremely interesting. Thank you so much for explaining that process that I think not a lot of people are aware of, but I think it's vitally important to be aware of, because a lot of things arise to my mind, but one of them is because it sounds like to me so far, maybe you can correct me, but you have to, it seems like you have to, from the process you were explaining, you have to get up to at least probably the fourth phase, and then more the fifth phase to actually see a vaccine go to market in that case, because of after the FDA approval and after the inspections and after several other things, and then after actually getting into the market. It seems like it's not really readily available, a vaccine, until you get to that stage from the process you just described. And then when I was hearing the first couple stages, even it seemed like you said a couple of years, 1 year, a couple of years.
Yeah.
They use the timeline of years. So my question is, we keep hearing in the media right now that a vaccine would, be available for COVID in 12 months, 16 months. I mean, the timelines are, I just hear so many different
they're
things.
Scary.
So
don't worry about it.
Yeah. So it seems like several countries are trying to develop their own version of a COVID vaccine. So, my question is then to you more directly. In your opinion, what is more or less a safe timeline for a safe vaccine to be ready on the market?
That's really a good question. Okay, well, yeah, what you've said is right. Vaccine development is a long, complex process. It often lasts about from 10 to 15 years. But right now, since Ebola breakout, we've seen like a different path we need to go through to develop these kind of vaccines. Right now, there are multiple platforms researchers are working on. This is public and governmental institutions. They are working on multiple platforms that are under development. Among the greatest of these, of the potential of the speed they have, are the DNA and the RNA based platforms. We don't have yet an approved RNA vaccine, but it's there. The idea is there, and research is being done. The work is being done, and what I like to tell you is that even though SARS-CoV-2 vaccine has to face multiple challenges, there is something called the pandemic paradigm, which is all these steps I explained to you, but in a really fast way. Okay, the same stages, but many of these steps executed in parallel before confirming a successful outcome of the previous step.
But is that safe, Anna? Is that safe?
Well, it has to be safe before anything gets approved, because you have to confirm at the end of, maybe you can run in parallel all of these steps, but in the end you have to confirm that all of the results of each phase, each trial, were the expected one. There's a saying in medicine that you must not do harm. So we know that every medication, every vaccine has side effects, but you have to evaluate if these side effects are better than will not make any more damage
like
than
make you worse
the
off
good
with your
they're
health,
making.
right?
Okay,
Yeah, like make you worse off with your health. No.
that's right. That's right.
So.
That's right.
Mhm.
So, well, since it was in January when the genetic sequence of this virus was sequenced. Since then, there has been a boom in the research and development process in all the world.
Yeah.
As of April of this year, there were 115 vaccine candidates. 115.
115.
This number has narrowed since then. 100, yeah. But right now, I know of 4 vaccine candidates who are already finishing the preclinical phases, and some of them are already in clinical, in the phase 1 clinical trials. So this is good news because it means that the most what I told you when I began is that the most important part of this, is the most important part, the exploratory stage, where you design your molecule, where you design your vaccine, and you can prevent, or you can foresight how will it behave in humans. This is already done, so
That's good, no?
It's a long way, but that's good. That's good news. Well, saying that since January up to now, we have 4 candidate vaccines already, that some of them are already in phase 1 clinical trials. I think it's really good news. Maybe, I don't know, but sometimes FDA has something called the fast track. When there's an emergency, fast tracks are used, and I'm sure these candidate vaccines will use the fast track. And what will happen, or what happened, for example, with Ebola or with influenza, is that these vaccines, these candidate vaccines that make it up to phase 3 clinical trials, go out into the market, and they are approved in the most in the population that needs it more, and then they are like perfectioned. They are not a finished product, let's call it that way, but they work. Okay, it's proven that they work, and I think it's what will happen with COVID vaccine. So my forecast will be that maybe by next year we will be hearing about a vaccine. Maybe it won't be accessible to everyone, but I think it's good news that we have all this development and research is being done, and while we're all in our homes and safe and keeping safe, research is being done. So I will invite everyone to really, what we can do right now to help is to follow what's being told us to do, to keep us safe, be as healthy as we can while we can, and care about the people that surround us. Okay, let's follow the local government and global authorities recommendations while while researchers do their work, and we have something that might take us or lead us to what we used to call normality.
Yeah, no, that and that's a really, really good message you're saying there, Doctor. And and I, for me personally, I have a brother that's a nurse, and he's been dealing with this situation really with patients since the start of this year. So I have a lot of respect for the medical community, for everything you do and people like you do in the investigation into these kind of things. And I have a tremendous respect for the medical community, really, truly. And yeah, we have to, I guess, and especially like how the WHO gives us guidelines for each country, well, for the world, really, just to do the right thing and be safe and be healthy and take the measures that they recommend. Especially, I think that's absolutely imperative, so we can flatten the curve flatten the spread of the, or slow the spread of the virus, and hopefully get less people infected and have less fatalities in these countries. And
That's right.
And I have a question, Doctor. So in that case, from what you just said as well, it does not sound like a commercially viable, accessible vaccine like that I could go to my local hospital or clinic and get to prevent me from the COVID virus. It won't be available this year. That's what it sounds like, right? Not till later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
In simple, in shorter words, right?
Yeah, maybe what will happen is when this vaccine candidate, the ones that make it to the end of the phase are approved, maybe they will be only available for patients or for risk population. It won't be available for everyone as any other vaccine, maybe influenza vaccine. You can go to the hospital and say, hey, I want to vaccinate against influenza. Maybe not next year. Maybe what I also said is that we will be in the need to see how the vaccine behaves among larger populations. This will be the phase 4 trials, and it will be really important to know to observe how it behaves so we can perfectionate this vaccine, and then we after that process we maybe can get a more available vaccine for everyone.
Okay.
And secure vaccine.
So, and that will take a while, it sounds like. No?
Yeah. That last part, yes.
Yeah. And Doctor, I have a question. When you say, like, especially through the fast track trial for a vaccine, once there's the approvals for that and availability for that and can be distributed to the populations where you say that, let's say, need it most. Who are the candidates for vaccines that would need it the most? Because I keep hearing, news, and I don't know, and see news that, and I don't know the validity behind all of it, but a lot of it seems statistically people who are suffering from this situation and dying are older people that have even past medical history issues and diabetes and obesity and things like that. But then you see these other sort of cases where they're younger people and then they get this, these weird colorations in their legs, and so who's the right candidate then in that? Who are the right people that should be getting these vaccines right away? I'm really confused.
Right now, I think we are still getting to know the virus, how it behaves. It has come to us that there's a lot of tissues and organs that also are being affected by COVID. So we are still getting to know this virus, and I think that once we get to the part when we have an approved vaccine, maybe we will have more clear who the target population will be for this fast approved vaccine. Right now, if it came out right now, today, let's say, I think that the ones will be the older people, maybe the ones with any disease, any chronic disease, because their bodies are more like they won't respond to the disease the same as a healthy person. So I think if today was the release day of this vaccine, I will go for this target population. But
but is that because sorry, doctor, is that because sorry to interrupt you, is that because of the older people's immune system? Is it because of what is something with their cells? What makes older people more susceptible and problematic to this issue with COVID rather than young people? What is that?
They are more susceptible to any disease. Even a flu can be dangerous for them. So what happens here is that their cells won't respond as fast as the the ones from a younger body. So also they have all a lifetime of many factors that have like damaged their cells, or they don't have the same number of cells in many different tissues, or let's say the respiratory system,
Yeah.
or the or their kidneys, for example, they don't work. They in any other people, they don't work as well as the ones of younger people, because they have a lifetime of being used, so they work slower, and they take more time in doing all of their processes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I will go for this population and the ones who have any chronic disease.
Okay. Very interesting. And I want to go to what you mentioned before regarding the placebo, because I think that whole area of study is very interesting, and I'm going to be speaking to someone soon in the next couple of weeks about the science and study of placebo in medicine.
Okay.
So that'll be in a couple of weeks, so it'll be interesting. But how, in your experience seeing that, how well does that work with people when developing vaccines? How often have you seen them maybe be okay or not be okay or get more sick? Because the placebo effect's quite an interesting area of study, and sometimes people debunk it, or just not debunk it, or people just don't believe it. But how do you see that sort of way of doing studying for medicines and things like that, and especially with COVID, because COVID seems like such a unusual type of virus, and the way it can affect you and everything like that, and like we were saying briefly before, like multi-organ in some cases. So, what's your take in a bit more depth about the placebo?
Okay. Well, placebo is a really good ally in all these trials. But I want to make clear something. For all these trials, we have to submit before starting any trial, even the preclinical trials. Sometimes we need to submit them to an ethics board, so we know what we're doing is ethical, and we are not damaging any individual in the study. So there are different types of placebo. A placebo, it's not only just a pill with sugar, a sugar pill. It works a little bit different throughout all the different phases of trials. Sometimes it can be just a sugar pill, but some other times might be, especially when we're working with patients who already have the disease, we can let them without any medication, any medication. We cannot let them do not have a medication. So what is done is placebo also means giving the patient the standard treatment for the disease. That will be the placebo in the trial. And so let's say in this case we don't have any medication or any previous vaccine for COVID, but we can maybe give them a vaccine for any other COVID, any other SARS virus. Well, sorry, another COVID virus. There are different types of COVID. So there are vaccines for COVID viruses. So maybe what will be the placebo will be another vaccine, and the medication, well, the studied vaccine will be the COVID-2 vaccine. What it's always the patients and the individuals, even if it's a healthy subject or a subject with the disease, so they are always taken care, and their safety is always first. Even while you are in the trial, if you got any kind of symptom, or you have like these characteristics for getting a patient or a subject out of these trials, to be sure that they're not getting in any danger.
Very interesting. Okay. And Doctor, just a final question for you, and I thank you so much for your valuable time today. What would be your final message to the general public right now who, you know, are facing a lot of situations right now in their life where, you know, in a lot of countries still are on lockdown, are in quarantine, has been spending a lot of time at home, feel a lot of sort of anxieties about just being in their house, you know, so, but at the same time may be scared, right, or at least for right now, to reintegrate into society, and depending where they are in the world, because they don't know if the situation with COVID's under control in their own country, and they might be scared to actually get the virus because, I mean, we've seen, obviously, as you know, people who've gotten it, had no symptoms, but they're asymptomatic and they're contagious and they can spread it. And I don't know, they may get the virus and nothing happens, you know, they didn't even know they got it, you know, it's like, okay, I got it and I'm fine. And I have antibodies now, big deal, okay? But there's another extreme of that where, you know, people, and I know this, you know, because of my brother who's dealing with the patients, you know, who these doctors who are heroes really right now, and the nurses and everyone working in the hospitals are facing a very, very heavy situation with people with the patients that come in there and just it's life-threatening, and there's a lot of fatalities, as we know. And you know, there's, you know, elderly people, there's younger people, there's all types, you know, the spectrum's huge with this. So what would be your message just to be, you know, because it seems like the vaccine will take quite a long time, at least a safe vaccine, to be available to the general public. And then it's about prioritizing, I guess, to certain countries. I don't know how that works, but you know, what would be your message just for people to feel less stressed about this whole situation right now?
Okay, well, I like to remind them that work is being done. You're not alone. We're all in this together. Like, it's really a work we're all involved in. Maybe we've got to being in our homes, but work is being done, and there's hope. There's hope, and I won't like to say it, like it's not as bad as it is being said, but
it's being portrayed, right?
Yeah, but we have to, we don't have to get into the extremes. Let's say I will go out right now and I don't care about anything else, or I won't go out ever, never ever. Okay, we have to keep our mind clear, and always please always question, where does this information comes from? Don't believe everything you see in the internet, and let's keep the hope up. We work is being done, and we'll go out of this one. And please just be sure that you're taking care of the ones you love. By taking care, I mean following the. Maybe you think, maybe you say, I'm really young, I don't care if I get the COVID. But what happens if you get it and you don't have any symptom, but then you go and visit your mother or visit your grandparents? Or let's take care of our people. If we all do this, we'll have a better outcome of all this. So my message will be hopeful, and let's work all of us from where we are. Let's do the work we have to do.
Excellent message, Doctor. And again, I thank you so much for your time and for coming on Spirit Lift. And thank you so much for this excellent discussion. And Spirit Lifters, please let us know your thoughts about this interview and about this situation. And please leave your comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.